When was the first time you were in Russia or Soviet Union? The first time ever?
From Helsinki, yeah.
No, the first time ever.
Well, in the 60s.
The 60s.
But, yeah, that was from because I was on a Norwegian ship, and they brought bananas to Vladivostok. No, Vladivostok was shut down. Near Vladivostok is a port called Nakhodka. And we brought bananas there one time. The second time I was in the Seaman's. They had the Seaman's hall because some foreign ships came there. There was a Swedish ship once, and not a Danish ship. But we brought bananas from North Vietnam, from Haiphong to Nakhodka. And I tried to find out if I could enter Russia from that way. And there was one guy there, he said, well, it's possible because suddenly they opened the Trans-Siberian for delegation from Japan. And there was a delegation was supposed to come. And he said, well, when the Japanese can come, you can also go with them, more or less, you know. So at the third journey in Nakhodka, I got the permission to leave the ship. What is the ship? The captain wouldn't let me go. And he said, oh, Russia, you know what you're doing in Russia?
You did.
So the trip was, first of all, Khabarovsk. The Japanese delegation left the train there because from Khabarovsk they had to fly to Moscow, the Japanese. But I left the train. Well, I want to start cycling, but they had watchmen and KGB or whatever was it because of the Japanese, and I was called by them, and they says, okay, son, who gave you the permit? Well, okay, he showed me around Khabarovsk. Got a very famous, I can still remember, that was in 1961, a famous skeleton of dinosaurs there, you know, I remember that very well. And then he said, cycling through Siberia, there are no roads in Siberia, you know, which was actually true in those days, you know. It was just a train. So you have no choice, but you have to go by train. So he put me in the train to the Urals. I could have probably gotten out before that, but I went out of the train station in the Urals in Sverdlovsk, and it was at night. So I went into the waiting hall, but with no time, there was the police there, you know, and then they interrogated and, you know, who gave you the permit? Oh, you're cycling around. No, there's no permission. I think you're not allowed to go in Russia by bicycle. They put me back, the next day put me back into another train to Moscow. In Moscow, the same thing happened again. The first time, there was nobody there who they should have known or informed about that there was a strange guy with a bicycle on the train, you know. So in Moscow, I simply start riding out of Moscow in direction of Helsinki. So when I was 30, 40 miles away, there was a camping ground on the side. So sometimes, with permission, tourists with the permission with the cars could come to Russia, especially from Scandinavia, and they were staying at the camping ground. So I stayed at the camping ground, but the guy, well, he didn't know, you know, he says, okay, he had some foreigners there, put up my tent, and next day, I left the tent, I went into town by bicycle, 40, 50 kilometers in Moscow. I went everywhere by bicycle. There's a picture of Moscow on the Red Square where everybody watching my bicycle. They all think I was Russian because I look like a Russian. And the bicycle was just a rotten old bicycle, you know. But it was right on the in front of the GUM.
Was it this bicycle?
No, there's another one.
There's another one. Okay.
Yeah, but it was.
No, there was. It's that one that it's in the exhibition.
No.
No,
Okay.
another one.
62. I got the one from.
Yes.
62 was the endless.
This was the tripod.
61, 61, the first trip. The bicycle is still there. It's in the cellar, but it's only the frame because I vandalized it. Because the carriers, I built carriers myself because I could do it in a factory. As a tool maker, you have solid carriers because sometimes before carriers, big leg is breaking all the time. It's no good. So I built myself one. So I took it off of the bike and then put it onto the new one. Yeah. The new one I got for free on a tripod which because they knew me, I was playing football in the teams, and so they knew me from football, you know. So I got the tree, but that time it was that bicycle, and eventually, it's a long story, but the second day it had been raining, but the camping ground it wasn't a bad spot, so it had wooden podests where people could put up their tent, but my tent wouldn't fit on it, so I put it next to it. And when I came back the second day from the city, the rain, my tent was this much underwater. All my camera, my pictures, well, not everything, because some of it was in watertight things, and some of the diaries and things takes time before it seeps in, you know. So I rescued much of it. So half of the day was trying to dry my stuff, and then he said, "Who gave you the permit?" He wasn't about he was very dubious, and he said, "You must go to the interest, you know, they are responsible for tourists in Russia," which I didn't do in the second day. So he was getting upset, and so on the third day he took me there, and then they make big eyes, you know. "Who gave you the permit?" "What? By bicycle?" "Oh, sorry, we have no ways of tourists coming on a bicycle. You must leave the country." And at the Metropole Hotel, I had to buy the ticket, you could choose. I said, I'm not going to Poland, because I would have to have another visa for Poland. So I said, I'm going to Finland. At the border, they stopped the train, and because I had Russian ruble with me, and I didn't have an exchange proof. And I told them that was the ship there. I was paid my salary on the ship that I came in coming from the ship from where? From Nakhotka? It's interesting. And they stopped the train for 1 hour and telephoning back and forth, you know. And finally he said, "Okay, how up?" And I was Weibo. I came to the other side, and I cycled from there, cycling in Helsinki. Then I said, "No, I'm not going home yet." I cycled to the North Cap. and on the Swedish side down, 1961, I was back in Höglo.
What a
Long
story.
story.
Love story.
And that was a big news here. Deutscher Radl to Russland. I didn't radl.